Hey there YouTube, France Opera here. It's Monday, July the 8th, and we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to take a walk along one of the proposed alignments for the streetcar expansion up to Montgomery Park. So this is 18th and Northrup, which is one of the proposed areas where the train is going to run. And so we're going to walk up 18th Street. This is the proposed area for northbound trains going to Montgomery Park. Southbound trains, it's proposed that they will run down 19th Street, and then they would join the existing alignment at Lovejoy Street and make a turn there. So the tricky thing with the proposal right away here being at 18th Street is the platform at 18th would have to move if the trains were actually going to turn and come up along this way. And as you can see, there's a lot of construction going on, at least down here, just a few feet away from the existing alignment. And one of the things that changed with this street earlier this year is TriMet started running the Line 24 bus down here. And so should Streetcar run up 18th and 19th, there is a desire to have the streetcar and the buses potentially share stops. But that's a little bit tricky because along 18th Street, I'm not sure about 19th, but 18th for sure, there is an old water main, which I'm actually kind of surprised they were able to dig up around where this fence is, because that's where the old water main is. And so it would be actually a bit difficult to have the train run on the right side of the street because it would be too heavy actually to put the tracks there. And so the trains are probably going to run on the left side should this be the alignment that's actually taken. And there will still be a bike lane, I believe, which means probably this row of parking on the left here would disappear. Or if it runs on the right side of the street, obviously on the right side. But one of these sides of parking would probably have to be removed in order to fit what they want to do, because I believe the streetcar would still share the right-of-way with vehicular traffic. So if that is what happens, it's also possible that maybe nothing will happen as far as parking goes. So this is Quimby and 18th, and this is where one of the first stops is proposed to go. It might go on this side of the street down here right before the stop sign, or they may try putting it here where there is kind of an existing strip mall. But none of this is firm. This is all strictly a possible proposal. This isn't even a finalized proposal. There's a couple of different alignment options. The only thing that is definite is that Streetcar does want to go to Montgomery Park. It may take 18th, it may take 19th, it may take a different street, and then going from east to west, it's proposed that it will run along York and Dolphin. But that may change, because one of the things that's tricky about putting the alignment in to Montgomery Park is there's the old Esco property. And right now, that's a big empty field. And it's not exactly known what is going to happen with all of that land. Now, over there is a stop for the 24. If the streetcar were to share stops with the bus, then instead of being on Quimby, it would be here on Raleigh. And I believe the southbound stop was proposed to go on 19th and Raleigh. At least one of them. There are, of course, several stops that have been proposed to go in. They won't be clustered too greatly together, and all of it's subject to change, because when we do get up north a bit more, there's a lot of open land still. A lot of this is still very industrial. it's kind of interesting that this building on the right here apparently is available. We'll actually go ahead and cross over this way, because I believe this is where Streetcar actually used to keep a lot of the old spare parts. And right above us is the Freeway. And so the Freeway poses a bit of a problem as well, building around that, because should Portland ever get hit with a major earthquake, that's probably not going to survive. And so the next proposed northbound stop is at 18th and Upser, which I believe is going to be the one after this, because we're in the Alphabet District right now. And so from south to north, it goes in ABC order. This is Thurman right now. And this district is kind of cool because it's still a lot of the old industrious Portland that we used to have a lot more in general. And many of the street names in this district actually are where Matt Groening got the ideas for the names of the characters for The Simpsons. Of course, you might have guessed that by Quimby being one of the proposed stops. And so this is Upser over here, which would be a candidate for being the second northbound stop. And so northbound along 18th, there wouldn't be a lot of stops. There'd be about 3 with one of the proposals that's come out. And this area I like a lot because you can actually still see a lot of the old train track from when freight lines would go through here, as well as cable cars. So in a lot of areas, there's track that would have to be cut out. And I wouldn't be surprised if underneath all of this asphalt is still old original track. Streetcar, of course, wouldn't be able to use that. It would all have to be replaced. And so this is the end of 18th, where it becomes Vaughan. And for a little bit of the way here, Streetcar would run next to each other. It would be two-way traffic before it turned off. And I believe the black building behind all of this is the field office. Basically, on the other side of this is Nido Parkway. And Nido only has one bus line that runs along it, and it runs about every hour. And so one of the reasons why this was a highly attractive area to have a proposal to put the streetcar in is because there's really no regularly scheduled transit that goes through here right now other than the 24. And the 24 would only share a little bit of the alignment with the streetcar. It would not share the entire proposed alignment. And so 19th and Upster would be the inbound stop, the southbound stop. So basically on the other side, over there, is where you would have a southbound stop. And this corner here is kind of an interesting corner to look at, because if you notice, it has a very wide turning radius. It's a very big corner. And that's actually not because of trucks. That's because that's where there used to be an original rail alignment. And so that curb was left exactly as is. And so streetcar would pretty much run up this way for a couple of blocks without making any stops, because if you look already, there's really nowhere you'd be able to put in a stop very well. And so it would probably be a shared right-of-way, or all of the traffic, or parking rather, along this street would be removed. But again, before anyone freaks out that they're losing parking, none of this is definite. This is all one of 50 or so possibilities. There are a lot of options that are on the table for this proposed expansion to Montgomery Park. And in fact, when we actually get to the Esco property, there are right now at least 3 proposed ways of going around the Esco property. And if I remember correctly, this is where northbound traffic would turn. Yes, this is where it would turn, because the next proposed what's called inbound station would be at Wilson and 21st Place, which would be basically down there. So the streetcar would turn right here. Southbound trains would be turning here along Wilson, coming down along 20th, and then they would turn left on Vaughan. Northbound would continue here. And since the last time I've walked this, oh my god, they have actually finished working on this building. This building here, I believe, used to be called the Graphic Arts Building. And here, all the way in the distance, you can see the target, Montgomery Park. And so it's entirely possible that maybe Wilson could become 2 ways, should the option of Dolphin and York not work out, or Wilson and York. Again, all of these are still multiple proposals. There are multiple different options that this could take on. And I have to admit, York is actually up here quite a bit more than I remember. So this is a good walk. And it's a very interesting walk, just to walk it and see what's here now. Because again, all of this, should the streetcar actually get put in, would change significantly. And so this is the back side of the Graphic Arts Building, and this is where northbound trains would turn, because essentially there's no other option. Once you get to York, you're looking at the existing freight alignment. Those tracks back there are tracks that are in use. And so this possibly might become a one-way street, should the northbound streetcar run along here. The tracks that are in the road here are not in use anymore, thankfully. So those would actually come out. And so this entire curb would probably have to get redesigned in order to fit the train in. And this is now where we get in the area that's really very still industrial. And as you can see, there's no sidewalk along here. So this is where the area would really start to change a lot. So the very first one of the stops along here would be where that stop sign is, and that I believe should be 21st Place and Wilson. or York. I forget already which street we're on. This should be York. But this entire street would effectively get completely redone. Because again, none of the track that's in here is in use. As you can see, it's all very filled in, but ironically, the track is actually in pretty good condition. That's actually very smooth for not seeing use in several years. But this entire street would have to be redone to put in the streetcar. There would probably be a bike lane that would go in. There'd probably be a sidewalk. But a lot of the parking, yes, would be kept. At least they would aim to certainly keep it. And so this is York and 21st Avenue. 21st Place then must be the next one. So right around here, though, would be one of the first stops going west. And again, pretty much the entire way that this goes, there are the existing tracks from when this used to be a freight line. But again, all of it would have to come out. It's too old to still safely run on it. And so this is 21st Place. This is where the first westbound stop would be, right here at 21st and York, which would probably be really good if you were an Amazon employee, because this is actually the Amazon Prime Now building here at the New York building. And all of this area is zoned industrial sanctuary, which is another thing that makes this proposed alignment a very interesting development opportunity. Because in the city of Portland, if you want to develop on industrial sanctuary, you have to put industry in. Or if you rezone it, you must take the exact same square footage and acreage of the industry that you're rezoning, and you have to move it somewhere else in the city. And so that's why this would be one of Streetcar's more interesting alignments, if it were to all be industrial. And so this is now the second self-storage area that we're passing. And the reason for that is storage is actually the cheapest thing you can build in industrial sanctuary. And so this could be an alignment of lots and lots of storage. It could also be a proposed alignment that goes past a lot of brew pubs, because another thing that you can build in industrial sanctuary is a pub, so long as you're actually brewing beer there, or possibly wine. I highly doubt you'd be able to make wine in Portland proper, and so more than likely it would be a brewery. And so the next possible stop going westbound would be at York and 24th. And this bridge possibly would have to get redone in order to support the weight of the streetcar. Even though you see the old freight tracks in there, again, those aren't used anymore. And this is one of the freeways here. And so, going eastbound, the bridge on that side is where the eastbound trains would run, the trains going back down to the city. And instead of going through downtown, trains that would come from Montgomery Park would go to roughly around the convention center and then turn around. And now this is part of the alignment we're planning is going to get tricky. because that big empty land over there is the old Esco property. And so one of the proposals right now goes through what isn't actually a street. At least, not yet. Will it be a street? We don't know. Because it's going to depend on how Esco's new owners want to redevelop the property. And so this street would have to be completely, entirely redone. Because none of this pavement would be usable, and certainly none of this track would be usable. And so, essentially, right where the fence is 24th, and that's where the next proposed stop going towards Montgomery Park would be. From there, things get tricky, because it's going to depend on if the streetcar can run through the Esco property, if it can run around it, if it can go through it on a diagonal, or if it would have to do what the street does right now and turn left. And so this is where there are several different options for the stations after 24th and York, because if it were to continue going through, the next stop would be roughly midway through this old Esco property. And this is going to be by far the biggest development opportunity with this proposed streetcar alignment, because this is something like 36 acres of land. And it's big enough that at one point, one of the proposals for this land was to use it for the ballpark. And thankfully that was struck down, because Streetcar said absolutely no way would we run if the ballpark is put here. At least not with one of the alignment options that was proposed. And so if Streetcar can't run through Esco, this is part of the way that it would then run down before turning to get to Montgomery Park. And so, if the train were able to run through Esco, the stop after mid-Esco would probably be at approximately 26th and York. Otherwise, it's going to run all the way down here, and returning trains are going to run up this probably a bit. Let's see, that was Roosevelt. Which might make this cross street Wilson. Yes, this is Wilson. So this is where trains going back to the city will turn. They're gonna turn right here. And I'll do a return walk and show you what Wilson looks like and where there's some proposals for spots. Now, this is one of the options, would be to actually run straight through all the way down to Montgomery Park. And I believe that is something that is going to happen, because I do believe this is going to be removed and would become a public road. But it also might not. And so they may have to do a little bit of a jog around the Esco property. And this would be tough to do, because this is a main road that we're coming up on, an existing main road. And this is already served by the line 15 and the line 77. And so you'd really get a lot of redundant transit if the streetcar were to have to come all the way down to here, to Vaughan. Now, that's an option that's still on the table, worst case scenario. There goes one of the new 3900 series buses that I very much like the blue paint on. But this is an option. It's not a very highly desired option, because if the train were to run along Vaughan until it could swing back around in front of Esco again, there probably wouldn't be any stops along here, because it's just such a main road. You'd want to get the train just going out of here as quickly as possible. And again, the 15 and the 77 TriMet bus lines already serve this. And those same bus lines already serve Montgomery Park. So there will definitely be a transfer point between the streetcar and the TriMet bus lines at Montgomery Park. And that's something that streetcar does want to do. You know, the streetcar as it exists today, some would argue that it's a city circulator. I would argue it's a city connector. You can take streetcar and connect to a very, very large number of TriMet bus lines. And that's what a lot of people do. For streetcar, one of their peak hours is not, you know, the rush hour for cars. It's midday. And so, we're going to turn over there, head up along 25th a little bit, and then start going back down towards Montgomery Park. Because worst case scenario, this is where a streetcar could possibly turn. It had to run down Vaughan. Because otherwise, this is where they want to run it. And that may still be difficult to do, because this is still a bit of Esco's property. Esco sold to, I believe it's a Finnish company, and I believe their new owner is Weir, W-E-I-H-R, something like that. And so they know what streetcar wants to do. There's been a lot of outreach on this proposed alignment, but this is where the streetcar would run in two ways to Montgomery Park. Or at least it's an option of running two ways to Montgomery Park if the westbound trains can't run through Esco first. So again, this is an option of having it two ways. And if it's two ways, it would run pretty much directly all the way down to Montgomery Park. There might be an intermediary station somewhere along here. If there's one proposed, I don't remember, because I don't recall seeing it on any of proposed maps for the alignment. But this, for sure, roughly for sure I should say, like a 50-50 shot, is where trains going back to the city would run. So this would either be a two-way alignment or it would be one-way, depending on if the train to Montgomery Park can go through the Esco property. And if so, then it would probably come up to where the old cannery building is here, which is now a parking garage. And it would then turn, and it would probably go straight down here, which since I've last been here has actually been reopened. And looks a lot better of pavement now. This on the left here is all new construction. It's a mixed-use building. I believe it's a combination of commercial and like live performance venue. I forget exactly what the idea behind this building was, but it's an interesting idea nonetheless. And so, roughly about there or so, if streetcar could run through the Esco property, is where it would potentially turn. Now there's another proposal of where this old disused rail goes through, to have the streetcar kind of cut through it on an angle as well. But again, it's all going to depend on what Esco signs off on as far as redevelopment. And so it kind of sucks that they just redid all of this pavement, because if the streetcar were to come up this way, they would have to dig some of this out, put the tracks in, and fill it with concrete. But it's probably going to be several years before ground is even broken on this alignment. I haven't even heard a year thrown out yet as to when construction might start. Maybe 2025, who knows? Maybe TriMet will start their alignment down to Tigard before Streetcar. But one of the things that will happen before the alignment to Montgomery Park goes in is 3 new trains from Brookville will be delivered. Those are hopefully going to be coming in next year. And so, once the proposed streetcar alignment does get to Montgomery Park, it would then turn left here at Wilson and 27th, and it would probably become a single track to hold trains waiting to go back to the city. On the other side here already is where TriMet's layover for the 15 and 17 is. And so the streetcar would probably turn left here, go up a bit, and probably sit around there. Maybe turn left, go into the Montgomery Park property. But this is where the expansion to Montgomery Park would stop for the streetcar. And they very much want to have it stop here so that it would be a very easy interchange to the Line 15 and the 77. And because Montgomery Park is just such a huge mixed-use building with industrious. This used to be the Montgomery Ward building. It's on the historical register, and I believe the Bill Nido Properties still owns it. And it's interesting that streetcar wants to terminate here, because a long time ago, when this was the Montgomery Ward building, freight trains would actually run right into the building, right underneath it. Now, that's not something that's going to happen with when streetcar goes in. Again, streetcar would end roughly about where the traffic signal is, and so then trains would turn around, they'd turn on Wilson, and they would start heading back towards the city. And heading back towards the city, I would argue you're going to get a much better view than heading up towards Montgomery Park will be, at least right now. Because, no doubt, if the streetcar were to go through here, a lot of this would get redeveloped. There's some redevelopment that's already started, but if streetcar were to go in here, there would be substantially more. When the streetcar initially ran to 23rd and Marshall, everything in the Pearl District was empty. It was just empty land with nothing there, because it used to all be rail depots. Now it's some of the most expensive condos in the entire city, and also, thankfully, a good mix of low-income housing, or at least subsidized housing, pricing-wise. So not market-rate apartments. And there's actually a good number of subsidized housing units along the streetcar alignment. And that's something that streetcar is very happy to have, because about a third of streetcar riders have incomes that are below the federal poverty line. So, if the streetcar had to run along Vaughan, it would probably jog along here, or it would just run all along Vaughan until getting to Montgomery Park. Again, this is all disused track. that would have to get torn out and replaced if the streetcar were to run through this alignment. I think it would be kind of cool if it did, to have it run along an alignment that used to be used by Esco and by freight trains. But at the same time, I think running straight through Esco, if that were to be an option that's signed off on, and Esco were to sell that property and divide up the property that they have, I think going straight through it would make a lot more sense. Because then you'd have very neat rectangular, blocks. And so pretty much all of the stations, once you do start getting close to Montgomery Park, those are all the stations that are all big what ifs right now. Even 18th and 19th is a what if. If 18th and 19th weren't to be the alignment that the streetcar were to run up, there's other options. It could run on 20th and 21st possibly, but 18th and 19th are very much so the desired north-south links. And having it run along Wilson and York, or Dolphin and York, I think, was another option. Those are options that are kind of firm. But again, all of it is still up for debate. There's nothing firm about this proposed alignment. The only thing that is firm about the proposed alignment is that it's going to go to Montgomery Park one way or another. Could that mean extending the line up along 23rd? Who knows? Maybe. It's highly, highly unlikely that that would be the option, because I suspect the Nob Hill district would not be very happy with having that major road already now have to share traffic with streetcar. I highly doubt that they'd ever make 23rd a transit and pedestrian district only. I think it would be really cool if they did. But I would see a huge amount of pushback from the businesses on doing that. There is a proposal to have it run through a bit of residential, though, to get to Montgomery Park. And that alignment, I don't remember what the proposal was, because that was an alignment that's out there, and the community basically said, all right, if you have to put a streetcar through us, fine, you can put a streetcar through us. There wasn't a very enthusiastic response to that. Having the alignment go up here to where the Esco property is, much, much more interest in that. And, streetcar has reached out to a lot of the businesses, basically anywhere that this alignment could possibly go to. There's been a lot of outreach from streetcar already saying, hey, we want to run an alignment through your neighborhood. What do you think? Because the streetcar is owned by the city of Portland, and it would be practically impossible to build this alignment without community support, be it from the residential community or the business and industrial community, where this alignment is probably going to go. But again, not definite. None of this is definite. This walking tour, whatever you want to call this is one of many options. This is just simply the kind of preferred option, at least from the city, to do it this way. But it's not definite. No one has said yes. No one has said this is what we're going to do. No one has broken ground on it. There's a lot of work to still be done with this alignment. This alignment to Montgomery Park, though, is just a huge development opportunity, no matter which way it goes. And eventually, if this alignment to Montgomery Park is built, the other desire is to eventually have it run all the way out to Hollywood Town Center. That would be also entirely new alignment. And that is basically okay, here's what will probably happen next after Montgomery Park. There's not a tremendous amount of planning that's been done with the alignment to Hollywood Town Center. It's just the next desired destination. And so the desire is to have the alignment to Montgomery Park eventually become an east-west link sort of deal. Since the NS line already is north-south, the A and B loop clockwise and counterclockwise through downtown in the central east side. Well, there's nothing that really goes east to west for Streetcar just yet. And so that's kind of what they want to do in the long term with going to Montgomery Park, is to go Montgomery Park to Hollywood Transit Center and vice versa. But when the alignment first gets built, it's probably going to be Montgomery Park to roughly, very, very roughly, the Oregon Convention Center or the Rose Quarter. Even that is still not definite, because on the east side, some turnbacks would need to go in. And these are turnbacks that Streetcar wants to put in regardless, because the east side really doesn't have any areas where Streetcar can turn back right now. And that is a problem when service gets disrupted. And so now we're on Wilson, which is, again, one of the preferred alignments for running back into the city. And on Wilson, they'd probably still have to redo the bridge over the interstate so that it would be able to accommodate the weight of the streetcar. But again, Wilson, I think, is the alignment that has a much better view. I very much like the view that you get looking out in the freeway towards the Pearl District. You know, some of the buildup that's been done here in the Nob Hill area, maybe not a super great view northbound into Industry, but if you like looking at old Industry, you'll get a glimpse of that too. And otherwise, you're going to have a view of the kind of teal colored bridge in the distance there, which I think is the Fremont Bridge. Don't quote me on that, because I still don't know my Portland bridges after 4 years of living here. I mean, I certainly know your iconic ones, the Steel Bridge, the Broadway Bridge, and the Telecom, but I really couldn't tell you what the heck any of the other bridges are. So here on Wilson, one of the stops going back towards the city would be on 25th. There'd be another one on 23rd. So back where we just crossed over, basically before it crosses the street, would be another stop for going back towards the city. Then after 23rd, the next proposed stop would be at 21st in Wilson. So it would go down a bit here into where you still have a lot of industry. There's some residential down on this end as well. And on Wilson, I'd argue this is probably going to be the much, much easier street to put the streetcar on, because the street already is in very good shape. If there's any old tracks underneath this, they're all going to be under the asphalt, so you know there's going to have to be some digging there. There probably is old track under the asphalt, because again, this used to be a major freight area, a major industry area, and so there would definitely have to be development work done. But there's already sidewalks along here. Because of the graphic arts building getting redone, a lot of that property is in very good shape. There's overhead wires pretty much already here, So Wilson, I wouldn't be surprised if everything falls apart. Wilson becomes a two-way alignment to Montgomery Park. If things don't work out on York, that would not surprise me if that became an option. That was almost a car crash on camera. So this is a very newly opened freeway ramp. And I believe that's the ramp that the 24 uses coming from St. John's. And so this is Wilson and 21st Avenue. 21st Place is somewhere in the mix of this. So we've probably walked past another proposed stop location already. And we'd go down Wilson again. And after 21st, Wilson would turn. And then we would start running down 19th, and 19th all the way down to Lovejoy. And so I think arguably the southbound or the inbound track from Montgomery Park is going to be a lot easier to build. The outbound to Montgomery Park is where there's still a lot of room for negotiation as to where the streetcar is actually going to run. And now, personally, I would probably put an inbound stop closer here on the 20th, really, than 21st Place, because with the graphic arts building getting very redeveloped, that's probably a lot of jobs, or a lot of job opportunity there. You have a post office that is still in use ever since the main post office in downtown Portland by Union Station closed and got moved to the airport. This is still a post office that's still used, probably for the North Portland area. And so, again, the streetcar would come down here on the 20th, and there's yet another public storage building because, again, cheapest thing you can build, an industrial sanctuary. And once we get down here to Vaughan, the streetcar would more than likely turn left. I don't believe there's any usable street further down south that streetcar would be able to run on. But who knows? Anything is still possible with this alignment. Again, the only thing that's firm is that streetcar wants to get to Montgomery Park. As for how it's getting to Montgomery Park, that is still up for negotiation. So everything I'm showing you now could have nothing ever built on it. That's also an option. This could strictly be, a video that 5, 10, 20 years from now shows possible missed opportunity. Or maybe it becomes a good thing that the streetcar didn't run down this way. Who knows? It's all up for discussion. And so that is why, again, streetcar has been trying to reach out a lot to any community that could potentially be affected by this alignment to Montgomery Park, where they're going out and they're saying, hey, we want to run through to Montgomery Park, and we want to run through your neighborhood. What do you think? Will you guys welcome us to your neighborhood? And the neighborhoods can say no. It's an option. The neighborhoods have the right to say no. And so now that we're back at 19th, this is where the streetcar would turn right to start running back down towards the city. And so we'll walk down this until we get to Lovejoy, because that's where the streetcar would then join up. Oh, hey, there goes Amtrak. That's where the streetcar will then join up with the existing alignment to go back into the city. So, now that we're on 19th, the first proposed stop would be basically right here in front of the Globe Lighting Building at Upser. And I think it's the only stop actually for the whole north-south bit where the stops would share the same street, north and south. For all of the other streets, they'd be slightly different. So again, even here at Upser, more old, disused track. And then after Upser, the next proposed stop would be at Raleigh. And so I guess, actually maybe, if things went very poorly, the streetcar could run down here, because that's actually a full street now. It could turn before getting to Vaughan, possibly. And now, all of this empty space underneath the freeway, because of earthquake concerns, this probably won't get built up too much. Because you'd probably have to give that a very good retrofit to be able to survive a massive earthquake, or really any earthquake. I honestly wouldn't trust that surviving. And now on 19th, I don't think there is a water line underneath here, so I believe this street will be a bit easier to build on, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. Oh, and that is probably the 24. Yeah. So this is where the 24 and the streetcar would start having some overlap on 19th. And so possibly already then, the streetcar and TriMet might be set up to share a stop. We'll find out once we reach this street and find out what street it is. Because if it is Raleigh, then the streetcar and the bus are already proposed to share the same stop. And it looks like, yes, this is Raleigh. So this is probably where then the southbound streetcar and the Line 24 bus would share the same stop, and so that would be a very easy connection between the bus and the streetcar. If you're taking the bus from St. John's and needed to get into downtown, you could change there for the streetcar, because the 24 goes down to Providence Park. And so 19th already is pretty built. I don't think 19th would see a whole lot of it self-change if the streetcar were to go in here. I think this is already a fairly built up, pretty highly desirable area. Oh, that's cool. A B Corp salon. Huh. Interesting. Sorry, side note there. And so here's Quimby. Again, the northbound streetcar would be at 18th and Quimby, so southbound there would not be a stop down here because it shares with where the 24 is at Raleigh. And so 19th and Northrup would be the next and last southbound stop. That would be new. And again, the streetcar might run on the right side of the street, it might run on the left. If it runs on the right, the bike lane will have to get moved, or the parking would have to come out. So, some options there. That empty bit of land there probably will fetch a good amount of money, I bet. Because that's probably the only real big empty plot that 19th still has. And if that developer knows that the streetcar wants to go there, that's going to sell for a lot of money. So yeah, this is a nice 3-mile walk, this proposed alignment. And so again, the return alignment for a streetcar I think would be far easier to build because pretty much everything on 19th here is already built up. Wilson is already built up. It's getting to Montgomery Park that would be the tricky part. And again, all of this could potentially just not happen at all because this is all one of many proposals. The only thing that's definite is the desire to get to Montgomery Park. Everything about this video could change. The streetcar could run on a totally different street. It could still run on 18th and 19th, but it might go through Esco. It might not go through Esco. And all of the possible stops could change because, again, where the 24 and the streetcar would overlap, there's definitely a desire to have those stops overlap because it would just be a very easy interchange. And so that's 18th and Northrup, where the existing alignment is. That's where it would turn right to go to Montgomery Park. You go down 2 blocks here, and we would get to Lovejoy, and it would turn left on to Lovejoy. And then again, continue to roughly the Oregon Convention Center or Rose Quarter area. And so that's Marshall. Honestly, I would think a stop on Marshall would probably be better than putting a stop at Northrup, because 19th and Northrup, sure, you'd be able to transfer to the NS really easily, but if it were on Marshall, you'd be able to be pretty much equidistant between the NS going both north and going south. And so this is 19th and Lovejoy, and this is where it would turn left and join the existing alignment. And so that's it. That's a look at one of the proposed expansions of streetcar going to Montgomery Park. And so it would come down on 19th, it would turn here, so this intersection would probably have to get redeveloped a little bit, not as much as 18th, because there's probably a good enough VSO already. And then there would be the stop. And so that's it. That's a walking tour of one of the proposed streetcar alignments to Montgomery Park. Again, it could all change. That's one of many options. But who knows? In a few years, we'll see. That's it.